Hi people, it's me again, Moreno Ravenberg. Um, in this video, as the header states, I'll be discussing on why astrology, specifically astrology, I've already discussed the occult. Wait for the end screen or check the link in the description below if you want the link to that video called The Occult World, where I discuss, for those of you that haven't seen it yet, where I discuss what things are like, what what the occult world is like and the global occult community and all of its flaws and blah 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 blah. Yeah, in this segment, in this video, I'll be discussing what the issue or what the not what the issue or problem is, rather why astrology isn't taken seriously by the mainstream population. Because globally, if you had to pretty much label something that is mainstream, some form of or some aspect of occultism that is mainstream, you'd say that it would be divinations. Things like tarot card readings and astrology. These things are things that people within society, as in mainstream society even, are more familiar with. But I'm discussing specifically divinatory methods, and the most popular one arguably is astrology. Astrology has existed for so long, ever since people can remember. And mainstream society is familiar with it. If you ask any person on the street in general, you can't compare it, by the way, to occultism, because, barely any people are aware or familiar with the concept of spirit summoning and whatnot. They have a general idea in the sense that they have the most basic ideas along the lines of what spirits are, and that there are people that can summon spirits, but that's it. Don't ask them anything beyond that, because they're as stupid as the day is long. But specifically, what I was just saying just now, referring to what I was saying just now, astrology. If you ask anyone on the street, they're familiar with astrology, horoscopes, all of that. Okay, to the point where it shows up in newspapers, in magazines, there are several pieces written on it. But why is, this aspect of occultism, because astrology, simply put, is occult science, how should I phrase this? Why does mainstream society why does mainstream society not take it seriously, or have a very bad or misinformed view on it, if you will? Because that's the case, if you just go out there, you ask people about it, the majority of people will tell you that it's nothing but a bunch of hooey. It's not something you can take seriously. It's just there for entertainment. They see it, or they compare it to the daily comic strips and caricatures you can find in magazines and in newspapers. And yeah, the reasons are, for starters, that astrology has been dumbed down severely, not just a little, in an effort to make it presentable to the public. Okay, there are several reasons, but let me start with reason number one. Reason number one is that it's been dumbed down. If you open a newspaper, you open a magazine, what are you going to see? You're going to see solar returns. And by solar returns, I mean the zodiac signs and their respective time periods in which they're dominant, as in specifically which zodiac sign the sun is in, regarding the day of the time of the year, based on months usually, as in a seasonal cycle similar to the seasons: spring, summer, autumn, winter. So you've got that. We're all familiar with that neat little column: Aries, Taurus, Gemini, blah blah blah. And the general statements, usually most of them are computer generated statements that go along with it. But yeah, even those are correct every now and then, because they're way too general, to the point where it's easy to get something correct if you're too generic. If you look at something in the utmost broad scopest of things, so to speak. So yeah, that's the issue with that's point number one. Point number two, occultism as a whole, society has part of society has dismissed occultism as a whole as being superstitious, being being fake, as in magic doesn't exist, for several reasons. These are sub reasons, as in, where we live in a time where people are overly fixated on materialism and not the spiritual, and they're being fed with all kinds of misinformation. That's another sub point. Gross levels of misinformation to the point where you don't know what to believe. Even when it comes to mundane news or articles or information in the world out there, you don't know what to believe. Okay, one paper comes out that says that mankind originated in Africa, then another paper comes out completely debunking that one, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on. And I understand that for the average person, it can be confusing to the point where you don't know what to believe anymore. As in, what the hell is real and what the hell is fake, you know? What kind of news source can you trust? But yeah, unfortunately, that's the world we live in. That's the point where it's gotten to, or that's the point where we have arrived at. That station that we've arrived at, unfortunately. But yeah, in any case, the second reason is misinformation. Okay, along the overall reasons that I mentioned. So point number two is the fact that people partially dismiss occultism as either something that they're grossly misinformed about, as in it being fake or it outright not existing, along with mankind's superficiality and current fixation on the material, rather than keeping in touch with the spiritual. The majority of people are like that. And don't forget that occultism requires a good deal of insight. You really have to be usually an exceptionally intellectual individual, or you at the very least need to be very serious about having an interest in this. And the majority of people out there only have a superficial interest in this. Even if they do have a moderately serious interest, it quickly dissolves when they actually come to terms with the fact that they need to actually put some work into it before they accomplish anything worthwhile. So they outright dismiss it, the same way that they dismiss mundane things. It's fun for a second, but the second that the going gets tough, even brief or even remotely, then they automatically just say, "No, screw this. It's not worth it." That's my point. And last but not least, the only other thing that comes to mind is simply, plain and simply put, new age nonsense. Let me just abbreviate it like that. NAN, new age nonsense. That's what I like to call it. There are movements out there, or communities, or let's just say small groups or organizations that occupy themselves with the lightest forms of occultism, undoubtedly in an effort to make it appeal to a wide audience, as in basically the most vanilla-est of versions of the occult, and try to present it to the mainstream public in an attempt to simply catch the attention. Basically, these groups, they're like hippies almost. I call them new-agers. Before I continue, I have nothing against new-agers, except for what I just said. But overall, as people, I have nothing against them. But what these groups try to do is they try to dumb down not what they try to do. They try to dumb down the occult. Okay, and as far as I can tell, they haven't succeeded. But they dumb down the occult to the point where it becomes something indistinguishable from the real thing, nearly indistinguishable from the real thing. And of course, they attract the wrong kind of people. They attract their kind, and the group keeps getting bigger and bigger gradually. And they try to present it to the public, and as a result, the public has a misconceived notion, regarding astrology in this specific case as an occult science, or as an aspect or facet of occultism. They basically judge a book by its cover. That's the way people are. Mankind and society is very fickle. People have always been fickle in general, There are people easy to be biased and prejudiced, especially people that make impulsive decisions or think impulsively or can't think. Unfortunately, there are a lot of those in the world. And yeah, people just automatically connect the dots when they see the kind of people that actually take an interest in astrology. You'll you'll hear statements like astrology is for nothing but dumb hippie like individuals that can think for themselves. Oh, and yeah, I remember. I almost forgot one last point. The very last point that comes to mind is the fact that science is also against occultism as a whole, and that includes astrology. Even if you look it up, I think astrology's Wikipedia page says that astrology has no scientifically proven merit along the lines of in the sense that it hasn't been proven surefire that hey, astrology works. All in all of the reasons I just mentioned, okay, are more than enough reasons for the average person to dismiss astrology. It's simply gross misinformation, a biased view, um, being unjustly prejudiced into thinking that a couple of lost or a failure looking like individuals or people that don't seem to have their act together or people that are generally speaking unsuccessful and or airheads or have their heads in the clouds, that these people have an interest in astrology. And last but not least, the fact also that misinformation makes it so that people view astrology more as a form of entertainment. It's not something that they take seriously. It's not something that they can take seriously. But yeah, obviously they have no idea, okay, what the real astrology is like, the kind of astrology that I teach and that I practice, or better said, that I practice and teach. I'm sorry for my dog barking in the background. Just ignore him. Just ignore her. So yeah, these are reasons for why astrology is specifically as an occult science is basically not acknowledged by the mainstream world as something genuine. But that's also fine. That's anything but surprising because it's not the occult and practically every facet of the occult, every aspect of occultism is not for the average person. If you just look at the superficial aspect of everything, you're not going to find anything worth mentioning. And that's what society does. Mainstream society, the world as a whole, just looks at things superficially and they're like, okay, nothing to see there, nothing that's worth mentioning. You really need to dig deep. It's like looking at the surface of a lake, okay, and simply making a statement making a statement referring to the entire lake just from what you saw superficially at the surface when you have no idea how deep that lake is, let alone what's at the bottom. So that's my point. But yeah, astrology, needless to say, I've already done plenty of videos on it in the past. It's very real and very genuine, blah 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 blah. I'm not going to go over it. Just watch my astrology playlist if you want to. And you'll find the link in the description below as well as the end screen. My point is that, yeah, that's why astrology is seen as just some dumb form of entertainment that has no merit whatsoever, regardless of whether it's right sometimes or every now and then. And the people that have a serious interest in astrology are these scammers and these dumb hippie types, these so-called fortune tellers with their glass things, their crystal balls, or their glass balls. And astrology has no real merit. That's the average person's consensus, let alone the fact that, oh, science has disproven it, there is no proof scientifically that astrology is actually worth something, blah, 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 blah. This is why the average person, this is why the mainstream public is not keen on astrology in particular. But as is the case with most things, only if you get down to the bottom of things, literally and figuratively, will you find its true merit. And that rings no truer, that rings no harder for anything else, for astrology than anything else, okay? With astrology, that is so badly the case that it's indescribable. So yeah, that's all. Thanks you guys for watching. Bye.